Welcome. Hey, Keith, good to see you again.
Bye.
Hey.
Hello, everyone.
Oh. Look at all the smiling faces. Barbara brought her own cheering squad over. That's good. Wonderful. All right. Well, so glad you came to join us for today. We've had a series of wonderful conversations across the week with a variety of people interested in using this space to figure out how to practice and get better as a narrative coach. And one of the drawbacks often in coaching is that we get really caught up in coaching. And so one of the things that we've done in building out this offer and in working with the guys at Ovida is draw from professions like sports, music, art, dance, things that domains in which deliberate practice is part of the process by which you get good at things. And so I want to really focus on the demonstration today and sort of showing you what we're offering as an opportunity for each of us to figure out how we could customize this experience for ourselves to practice the things that are most important to us around what we would like to improve on as a coach. And so we're going to just walk you through a few of the elements. I'm going to show you actually a live recording that we made on the platform with one of our former NC members. So you can see what it looks like in real life, and then we'll take all of your questions as we go along to see how this might be a good fit for what you're looking for. But before we begin, I'm just really curious, is there something in particular that brought you here today that you're most interested in or most curious about in terms of working with this technology as a way to help our practice? Something that you'd like for yourself. And you can just put your hand up, you can put it in the chat box and Emily will pick that up for you. But what intrigues you about all this? Sharon.
Yes, 4 of us from our original cohort for narrative coaching in 2020, we still get together on a weekly basis and we utilize that time not only for personal connection, but to remind ourselves of the skills that we learned in narrative coaching and to practice. So we go back to some of those tools and it's really helpful.
Yeah.
I would like personally, I wanted to be able to have it done more naturally than having to look at a paper with the tool and so forth, because
Yeah.
I think it's one of the most effective ways for coaching.
Yeah, I would agree. Thank you. That we all.
David, I'll echo from the chat. Barbara says, interested in the interface of AI and narrative coaching.
Okay.
And Colleen adds, I want to learn and unlearn and relearn.
The never-ending quest of life. That's fabulous. But Sarah, we'll get to Barbara's question in just a minute, but what's on your mind?
Hi, David. Nice to see you again. I'm in Sydney this morning, so sorry, just eating my breakfast.
Okay.
But I learned narrative coaching with you in a retreat in Sydney, but also through IECL. And I realized that the way I learned it is actually not going to be appropriate for my client that has a dilemma. She's currently in a high-profile do-good kind of role, and the contract's coming to an end, and she's considering moving to a corporate position, which in her mind seems to be the worst option. Okay. So it's a kind of, I'm really curious. So I'm looking for ways to just think differently about moving from something bad to something good, because she feels like she's something good to something bad. So
Okay.
And I'm interested in ideas about how to work with her.
Yeah. And so, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, and just to improve my skills in this
Okay.
area. Thank you.
So as I was saying before, and you'll see what this actually means when I show you the platform, but it was originally designed and used to record entire coaching sessions, which you can still do, and that will form part of what you would do in the practice groups. But we know that sometimes if we just practice an entire coaching session, we might uncover 10 or 12 things we wish we'd done differently or better, and then then there's so many. And so we want to encourage you, and we now have an emerging capacity on the platform to use the same platform to do practices, not just record sessions. So you can identify like, I get really excited with this client and I don't pause long enough, or I keep interrupting them, or I'm using more of my questions than what they're actually saying. And so then you could set up a little practice with your partner to say something to me. And so I can notice myself not pausing. And I can become aware in an actual simulated moment, what happens for me and what comes up for me, and what is it going on in my mind that I'm telling myself that leads me to talk when I know that I'd be better off being quiet. So you can actually unpack your own habit in real time and practice an alternative within a space with you and your partner. So again, you might think of, Sarah, how you would talk to this woman about this transition in a different way, or how you might coach her differently by practicing what it would be like to have that conversation with her. So, and in terms of, Barbara, your question, so there's AI is everywhere, and so it's sort of in our lives maybe, or in our consciousness, whether we like it or not. What I appreciate about the two founders is they have a lot of excitement around some things that AI can do to accelerate our development, but they're not zealots who are going to push AI at the expense of anything else. Their fundamental mission in their business is to help humans communicate better with each other. And so any of the AI possibilities that are available are only in service of making you a better coach, not in showcasing what the AI itself can do. You'll see in a few minutes when I show you the platform that you could use the entire platform to great value and not use the AI features at all, if that doesn't interest you. The good news for us is that everything that's done on the platform stays on the platform. It doesn't go anywhere else. And you can invite whomever you want to view your video, and that's it. Others will not have access to it. So it ends up being a pretty private and intimate space for you. So like I said, you'll see in a few minutes when I show you the platform what the things that AI part does. But again, the vast majority of what the platform offers is the capacity for you to see yourself coaching and to get support from the person that you're coaching about how to get better. And if you choose the option, you can actually have a mentor work with you as well. Okay. Is that good enough for now? Is there anything else you'd like to know as we kind of move on? All right. All right, so I'm going to go share the screen again and just put together a few things here. So I'm just going to have a couple of minutes about why we're doing this. And then kind of we'll have a chance to look at the platform itself and kind of walk you through that. And we have the good fortune of having my colleague Jonathan Wrights on the call, and Jonathan's was there near the beginning as well, and this adventure, and he may want to chime in as well to share what he's discovering. He started to use this in his programs as well. So so they're just kind of two basic blocks of things that are important to me about why we're doing this. One is that we're all recognizing that, we're being asked to show up in new ways to our clients. Many of their issues are more difficult than they might have been a few years back, more complicated, multifaceted, etc. And so there's really a call to kind of reimagine coaching in a way to respond to the needs of this time. And so we feel like this is a way for you to hone in on your skills and your mindsets around narrative coaching in a way that wouldn't be possible if you were to just do this on your own. And then secondly, I'm not worried about AI taking over my coaching, because I think there's some things AI can actually do better than most coaches. But it's actually, I look at it as a wonderful opportunity to really up our game as human coaches and really hone in on the pieces that we do extraordinarily well, and then get support to do that even better. I know enough about narrative coaches, having done this for a long time, that you love hanging out with each other, and Sharon's story brings that point to bear. But we want to create an opportunity for you to work in practice groups, as opposed to just working on the platform on your own, which is what we did in the first pilot. And then secondly, we know that, and you all asked for in a survey we sent out, for more spaces and support to reflect, practice, and get feedback. So this is, I can't think of a better place to do that than what I'm about to show you. But the second thing that's important to me, as I said before, is that unlike other domains, coaches often don't spend enough time in our version of deliberate practice. And so we're going to we are creating resources for you to help you do that. And I'll talk more about that in just a few minutes. So that's kind of why we're doing this. I won't go into great detail here, but I just want to show you, I'll put this up here. Most coach training, even some of ours, focuses a lot on coaching skills. And so this is a model I created for a paper I'm working on with the Institute of Coaching at Harvard, and looks at sort of 4 other C's that kind of go into building a mature and masterful coach. So the thing that I really enjoy about doing initiatives like the one we're doing now with the practice groups is it allows you and supports you to address all 5 areas of your own growth. So it's not just skill practice, it's more the maturity of how do you know which skill to use? How do I know if I'm doing it well? You'll be able to see a lot of the relational dynamics because you'll see the live video of the conversation. You'll be able to have 24/7 access to the sessions you were involved in, so you can give feedback or take notes. So you can really begin to look at what do I really need to develop? And so you might notice the overt behavior, like pausing, or the type of questions you ask, or the percentage of time you talk. But then if I said, okay, so if you want to address that, how do you plan to do that? Well, that's a harder question. So we're going to create some resources. We have some resources for you about how to help you begin to identify, okay, this behavior I'm not totally happy with. And how can you help me think about how can I make that better? And so that will be available to you. And so one of the nice distinctions, and Emily on our call here was one that kind of helped put this together, but the AI part of this offers you very focused, objective, observable, non-judgmental feedback. So it'll measure things like, what percentage of the time in your coaching session did you talk? It's often way higher than most coaches think. And so it will create metrics for you. It will create sort of a running chart of how your percentage of time you talked changed across sessions. So if you said to yourself, I noticed in my first session that I'm talking at a rate beyond the sort of norm, which we sort of tell you what most good coaches do. And then you can say, I want to work on that. I want to understand, why is it that I talk so much in the sessions? And so then you'll be able to see, does that show up in the actual change in the metric for my talk time over the course of the 3 months of my practices? And there's an emerging set of resources and recommendations that the system will provide based on what you've said was important to you. But then either the mentors or even just yourself and your colleague that you're in a coaching pair relationship with, they're going to focus more on the more subjective, the more human-centered feedback, and they're going to ask you more questions and to help you kind of dig into what it is that you want to focus on going forward. So they offer 2 very different kinds of feedback. We often can give the first kind of feedback as a mentor or a supervisor or a peer coach, and in some ways, the AI does parts of that for us. Things like word count. We might have a sort of a sense that, I have a feeling that words come up often, and you can actually type that word into a search bar and it will tell you exactly how many times that word showed up and exactly where in the conversation it showed up. So again, it kind of takes the sort of the burden off of tracking some of those things off of us, so we can focus on what we do really well. Yeah, so I'm gonna just give you this part. We've heard it both ways. I've kind of landed on this way. Before I show you the platform, I'm gonna kind of walk you through kind of the mechanics of how do you get involved, and so then it will answer a number of your questions about the platform itself. So we're going to host 2 orientation sessions in the next week or so to make sure that we walk you through the entire platform, the entire process. We'll record that in case you can't make that live. So answer all your questions about the mechanics of participating. We will take care of registering every one of you that signs up on the platform. We will kind of look at all the lists and organize people by time zones and sort of level of participation, and let you know so that we can help organize those practice groups. And then there's a bunch of resources that we'll give you as well. That's sort of our basic sort of introductory level. You will then choose a partner from your practice group. Our encouragement is to stick with the same partner throughout the 3 months, because that way you will have built up trust and rapport, and will deepen your capacity to practice. You'll schedule your coaching or practice sessions whenever you and your partner want to. There's no time, it's 24/7 access. So whatever's convenient for you, you can make that happen. You also can schedule your own debrief sessions. And part of that is then making commitments to each other about how much and how often you want to give feedback to each other on the platform. Most people found that doing the debriefs with the platform open was really helpful, so they can look at the actual material on the platform. And then we'll, Emily in a little bit will show you our practice group forum for you to touch base with other people also in the program, and to see what, just to kind of hear from you how it's going, what questions you have, what you're discovering. There's a second level, which is has all of that, plus then you have access to a mentor. And we'll have mentoring groups once a month, as well as your mentor will give you feedback a couple of times each month on sessions you've done. There's a video already around how to use SIPs, how to create one. And we'll have a further workshop after you've tried that a few times to kind of fine tune some of the practices you've created that are serving you. And so that's really a great one if you want a more experienced mentor narrative coach. We've got 4 of them lined up to help you with that. And then there's the last option, which is all that plus a session with me every month to kind of go deeper on what you're experiencing and what you're hoping to get out of this experience, as well as some resources to do that. Okay, so anything about any of that in terms of how the process kind of works, at least as best as you can understand it right now? And then I'm going to switch gears and show you the actual platform itself. But I wanted to see kind of if anything is coming up that you'd like to ask right now. All right. All right, Emily's. Yes.
Karen was asking if there is a specific time frame.
So the yes, so the each cohort is 3 months. At least it is this first time when we'll do some survey work at the end of this pilot to see if we've gauged the time frame right, if you want more or less. We want to give you enough time to really work on some key things in your practice. So they're 3 months, and the higher up you go on the levels, the more sessions you can have, and the more time you can practice. But yeah.
Yeah, sorry, David. Is there a sort of time when you have to this will start in September, or
Yes.
it's sort of like the timing is fixed.
Yeah, so this is a 3-month window, so that this window will close in middle of December. And then you can choose to buy another 3-month block in January, or wait a while, but you can it's done on a subscription basis, and then you tell us when you want to stop and we will. And then you tell us if you want to start again. Yeah. Yeah, and I suspect we will learn a lot from this pilot, and we'll make some tweaks to the offers for now. But for me, I'm just really excited to be able to share this with you. And same with Jonathan. One of the benefits of our particular coaching schools is that we're quite close in on what Avita's doing. So, and they've been able to use a number of pieces from my integrative development work to begin to think about creating a sort of an end-to-end solution for coaches that I think is really exciting. So, yeah. So, just as a frame for to sort of get us ready to look at the platform itself, Emily, could you just we'll have like about eight minutes. I'd like people to be in.
888 minutes, starting now.
Thank you, Siri. It wasn't what I asked for at all. I'd like them to be in groups of 2 or 3, and just to share, what if you chose to do this and you have access to a platform to support your growth, what is one thing you'd most want to look at in your own coaching practice? Just to kind of compare notes. Is there something in particular that's really top of mind for you about something for which this could be really helpful? So just share some examples of what's coming up for you, and hear kind of what your colleagues are interested in. And that way you can be kind of primed as we look at the platform itself to see how it might help you with the thing that you most want to practice. Okay.
I have gone ahead and created those rooms, David, and I'm going to open them.
All right, cool. So enjoy, and I look forward to hearing what you come up with when we come back, and then we'll move right into the platform. Great. So I'm really curious. I would love to hear a few examples. I'm going to have the real Jonathan now, not the. You were the cardboard cutout, Jonathan.
Yeah. I'm in a public place, so my Wi-Fi is only kind of reliable.
Okay.
So I'm managing my availability. I'll throw out something that Kate and I talked about, though.
Great.
Kate raised a really interesting possibility that this has got the possibilities of going into the details of the session, but simultaneously seeing the macro trends.
Yes.
In some really powerful ways. And I think that's exciting. I think that's spot on for what's on the table here.
Yeah. Thank you. Others want to share what you came up with in your groups?
I mean, I can say, hi, David. I do like the idea of the deliberate practice and the idea of being with another coach so that you can just take a piece of what it is you want to work on and work on it, rather than having to do a whole coaching conversation. So it's actually quite intriguing.
Yeah.
And to get that very, polar feedback, you did it or you didn't do it. There is no.
Yeah. And it's right there, right?
Yeah.
And when Jonathan and I were with founders in Orlando last weekend, we were helping them to see the value in giving more flexibility in how people use the platform, so that you can meet more of their learning and development needs. And so to be able to start organizing this by the minute, not by a session. I've been lobbying Brian for two months for that since I saw him in Brisbane, because then it frees people up to practice, and even more so because more and more coaches are moving to less than hour-long sessions. Their clients want 15 minutes of intervention; they don't want an hour conversation. And so, and if you're going to practice, you don't want to have like 6-10 minute practices and you know, and have each one count as a whole other thing. You want to just be able to stay in there and stay in that groove and practice it with your colleague. Kind of really unlock what is it that was getting in my way before. Yeah. The other Karen.
We're bookends here.
Yeah.
Two of the three of us in our small group had experienced something where it tracked us, our coaching conversation, and had put it in writing, and in my case even gave some feedback, not to the level that you're talking
Yeah.
about. And I experienced a regression in my coaching, and a time where I was not present and in flow, and was having a very hard time where everything, and I've shared this with you, David, I'm sharing with the group, where I didn't get past that phase. I don't think it took me away, and I didn't quite know how to come back. And I'm just wondering how go through, back is not the correct word, go through to the next level. And the person who was mentoring me, it just didn't, we couldn't figure it out together. And the capacity was also low at the time, but how will that be addressed in this? Because, you know, when you care so much, you care too much, and then you're not present. So, yeah.
So if I understand you correctly, that sometimes you get the feedback, but you're not quite sure what to do with it. And then it's kind of making you, so how would you have liked that earlier experience to have been different?
When I saw, accepted, and practiced, I noticed that when I was practicing with the client, and then went back to it, there wasn't a bridge. One, I noticed myself detached. I was in here while I was trying to be there and trying to tweak. And so when I took that back to my mentor, I didn't get what I needed. I don't know what I needed.
Yeah.
And so, and yeah, that's, so the difference would be a bridge of some sort. And I think, you know, some of your papers and think, you know, let's practice on this one piece. And as you said, these small, which is what we're all talking about, and tweak that rather than saying you've got 20 things to work on. And
yeah, so that this is really good that way. And they're actually building a feature after my last conversation with them around these deliberate practices, where you'll be able to identify the portion of the conversation where you weren't at your best, or something didn't go as you'd hoped, or the client reacted differently than you imagined. You'll be able to kind of pull that out of the main video and like a little separate little screen, and actually work with that piece and have it as a prompt again. So you can just play the client saying the thing that triggered you before or got you off guard. And so what do you want to say now? And you'll be able to record practices with the actual live video data. It's not quite there yet, but I would imagine by the end of the year, it'll be there. But even now you can still approximate that by just, you know, going back in and replaying the video. And what I love about this is it allows you to kind of be, as somebody was saying earlier, really close in on your lived experience of what you did, but also the broader picture of what happened in the session. So you can kind of move in and out depending on where you want to pay your attention. Like for me, I tend to scan the transcript first because I'm a better, faster reader than I am a listener, and I can spot things to pay attention to. But the beauty of this is it's not like, you know, oftentimes when you're on, you know, apps or things, you feel like they're forcing you to contort yourself to fit their system. And what I like about this is it's all very intuitive. They've done a really great job with the user experience. So, and they actually have probably the most useful FAQ section on any website I've ever seen. It actually answers real human questions as opposed to things that no one ever asks. So I just find that it allows you freedom to use the platform and the features of the platform in ways that serve you. And So,
Thank you.
yeah. All right. So I'm going to switch gears here, and I'm going to put up this video, and just let you, this is for you, Jonathan. I'm going to be on brand and let them sit with this. It's an inside joke with Jonathan, but so this is what the platform looks like. So Kathy and I, the platform, Jonathan's laughing. So just to take that in and get a sense for what that's like. This is what yours would look like if you join us. And so once you're registered for the platform, you can go in and book sessions, which Kathy and I did. And in about half the length of time you talked, all of this will be ready for you to look at. It's pretty fast now. So there's sort of, for our purposes right now, we can sort of skip the left-hand column for a moment, but there's like 4 basic building blocks here. So the video is the actual recording, and I'll play some of it in just a minute. The transcript, and you see that the transcript is time-stamped, so you know who said what when. If I see something in there, I go, wow, what was going on there that I said that? If I click on that part of the transcript, if I like go here, it moves the video forward to that exact same spot. And so that's one piece. So these two are synced. You can go back and forth, and each one links to the other. If I click on a spot in the video, it'll go to that part of the transcript. Really handy, especially like Karen, that sort of big picture, little picture work can be really helpful. The second piece is underneath the video screen, right through here, is a menu bar of things that you can access. So if I click there, this was the AI's summary of what it thinks we talked about. I thought it did a extraordinarily masterful job of capturing the key themes of our conversation. There are some of the nuances, because I know Kathy really well, because we were listening for things that were not being said. Some of what she was sharing was private, more than she wanted to share even with me. And so there were some gaps, but that was fine. We sort of had eye contact, like I'm not going there, which is fine. But overall, it's a great starting point to kind of remind you of some of the key themes. It actually gathers up things that Kathy said she was going to do. So these are all actions from Kathy. And again, it's a great, often we have to write these things down ourselves, and it takes us away from the session. So I might write down a couple of things that seem important to me, but this provides us a great beginning summary. These next 4 are all about you and the person you're coaching. So a place to take notes. So again, we want to make this dialogical, like you might have a session with your partner, debrief it, work on some stuff, go try a few things, and then come back here and put in some notes about things you want to talk about next time, or things you want to report you did. I can, if I was your mentor and you asked me to review this session, I can go in and ask and offer my feedback here, and I can make it such that it's time-stamped. So I'll say, I want to offer a comment about this one over here. I can go ahead and do that, so that you can go right to the spot where I give you feedback. These are key moments. So this was the very first feature, I think, in many ways. A couple of things that shows how much I talked and how much Kathy talked. There was more of me in the beginning and the end, because we were just sort of catching up and then debriefing than there were when we actually got going. But it's a great way to see how we're doing. These little blue tick marks here, these are what's called key moments. So these are things in which the AI has identified based on about half a dozen highly validated measures of communication. So like one of them might be change in tonality, change in energy. And there's things that the system picks up that it identifies as a key moment. Now, just like with humans, you may not agree with all of them. Some of them might even not be right. It might think something's really exciting when in reality, in the real conversation, it wasn't. So that's fine. Just ignore it. Just like you would if somebody's trying to give you advice or observe something they think is important, but you don't. But it's really helpful for me as a supervisor. What I can go look at all these blue tick marks, just got to get a feel for kind of what's happening here. And then I'll do my own version of this. I can also add key moments if I want. So can the person being coached. If they flag something that was important for them, or I flag something that was important to me or about the conversation, I can add those in to help us draw our attention to them when we're debriefing. So in this particular, the metrics of this are going to be a little off because we were doing a lot of catching up, not just coaching. But these are sort of 6 core variables, again, highly validated measures that we use as sort of benchmarks to kind of help the coach get some initial understanding of how he or she did. The beauty, and it's got a little explanation if you want to know what they mean and whatnot. For each of these, they did a lot of early research with early users to kind of create a range for each of these 6 over time. With what did more masterful coaches do versus less masterful coaches. So they have like a little band, and the hope is being that you should be in that band on all 6 of these. And if you're not, then again, that's an invitation to be one of your first points of practice. So 42 is a bit higher than I would normally have in a session. That again, we were asking a lot of questions to catch up. But you see, like say, I only interrupted 3% of the time, which is actually not bad. And 83% of my questions were open, which felt good. So what will happen is if I were to coach Kathy across the 3 months and 9 sessions or whatever I had with Kathy, and I would say, my share of voice is higher with Kathy than with more other of my clients, it will create a bar chart of me tracking, like I said, my progress on getting better at lowering my share of voice. So it gives you again an objective measure. It doesn't make any judgments about things being good or bad. It's just saying you talked 38% of the time. And so if you decide that was important to you, then you've got it will track it for you. Are you getting better at this? Yeah. So I'm gonna Karen Sutter.
Yeah, thanks, David. I'm just curious. You mentioned that. Okay, question is, do you get to practice with different people?
So
you're doing the practice with the same person over and over.
So my suggestion is that one way I've seen this worked well, like when we did our first pilot, people did stay with their the same person the whole time. The positives in that for many people was they got to go deeper because they built up trust and understanding of each other. The downsides for a few, if it wasn't a really easy or good match for them, a couple of people didn't have as much robust practice as they'd hoped for. So again, part of why we're doing this in a practice group as opposed to you on your own just being partnered with somebody, as you could say, I feel like I've learned a lot from this person and watching them coach and learning from them. Their feedback has been great. And I'd like some variety. Like, so for example, you might say, I used to coach a lot of nonprofit leaders and now I'm doing more corporate leaders, whole different type of leader. I might want to partner with somebody who's done a lot of coaching in a corporate environment so that they can simulate those behaviors. They can provoke me in ways that maybe your first partner couldn't. So you'll have the capacity within your practice group of moving around if that's what you so choose.
Because just to come back, I think when you're working with somebody, you get into a sort of cadence after 2 or 3 sessions, perhaps, where you sort of know when they're going to speak and you sort of know when they're going to speak as opposed to when you first meet them. So it would be nice to practice with new people so that you're not in that cadence so you can practice what it's like when you're with a new client?
Yeah, it just have to be, it depends. Like, for example, you might, when you're working on one of your areas for improvement or maturation, you might bump into a piece of trauma for yourself, or a piece of a bad memory, or a place that brings you anxiety. And you might say, hey, that cadence might actually create enough safety for me to actually talk about that and maybe work on that as one of my barriers to getting better at this particular skill. And this is where the deliberate practices, I think, are really helpful, because you're right. It's easy to kind of lull ourselves into comfort with somebody. Oh, here we are again. And they're like this, and I'm like that, and this is what we do. And, and so it's easy to fall into that. But with the small intentional practices, you actually are more rigorous in what you're practicing. And so they can actually hold you accountable for that. And in that you might find, hey, I need to really I keep leaning away from this practice, or I keep doing it and my partner's too nice. They don't ever call me on it. They want to help me out, or they want to rescue me. I need somebody who's going to be firmer with me on this. So part of it for you is to really claim agency as a practitioner and say, what do I need to get the most out of this? Because the platform will reveal all kinds of things, but it's only of value if it's something you're going to do something with.
70% of Aussies.
Yeah.
With the help of this free online tool, you could get through blind public quality. So you can read.
So if somebody's got something going on in the background, there we go. Thanks. Colleen, you had a question?
I do. Thank you, David.
Yeah.
So it occurred to me when you were showing the section on the AI actions.
Yep.
And even with respect to the summary as well. My tendency is not necessarily to trust new technologies until it kind of proves itself a little bit. And there's a lot of debate out there about AI. And
Yep.
I think I heard you say that when you were doing it, you found that the summary to be pretty accurate.
Yes.
And that was with respect to the actions that the AI came up with. Do you know, does the AI pick up on things like asking a question of what will you do next, or something that's kind of a future focused question?
So one of the biggest, there's many big problems with AI done poorly. So rampant biases, hallucinations. I remember, just for the fun of it, I put into one of the ChatGPT platforms. I've got this problem. How would David Drake handle this if he were my coach? It came back and said, there is no David Drake in coaching. So I thought, note to self, that's a crappy platform. But I look at this, the modeling it's drawing from is not from the entire coaching universe. It's actually drawn from the users of the platform in many ways. So I find that it would more likely miss something than misconstrue something. So it doesn't tend to hallucinate and make up stuff. Like I said, we know more about the subtleties of humans and communication. So there's some of this that might not pick up, especially as a narrative coach. And I thought every one of these things was important to her. That's on this list. Now, again, I'd go back, if I were actual coach, I'd say, so here's 6 items. I would double check. Did this capture what your notes and your memory says you said you want to do? Of those 6, what should we work on first? And so I find it just alleviates. I mean, you still have to track, because you need to know that, something that really stood out for you is on this list. And if it's not, you need to add it. But my experience so far is that it does a pretty darn good job of capturing what's there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So just to kind of make this seem more real, I'm just going to play. Oh,
David, can I just throw in that matches my experience exactly?
Okay.
That speculative input, it really doesn't add into the summary.
No.
But if it's mentioned in the conversation, it ends up on the AI actions tab. And your reviewer, as a reviewer, you can edit that and add coaching questions right there on that AI actions tab. That sometimes that can be a good place to brainstorm around, hey, the action said this. What might have been some alternate questions, or what might have been some alternate actions that you might have caused in the session. So for what that's worth.
There we go. There we go. So I'm just going to play just so you can see what it is like in real life. This is actually just a normal coaching conversation.
David, I had quite a set.
Oh, Karen, I'm sorry. I can answer your question before we begin.
Yeah, it's not. I just was curious, David, if what happens to the videos when we're done with them? Do we have the option to delete them? You know, if I'm sort of recorded something and I think, yeah, I don't particularly want that hanging around in cyberspace. Can I go in and remove it eventually?
So several things. So one is it never makes it to cyberspace. It only lives on this platform. One of the things that was because human communication and things like coaching in particular are often very confidential spaces. Security was huge on the mind of the Ovidio guys. And so they've just recently won 2 corporate contracts in extraordinarily security conscious companies. What they had to go through to pass the tests around penetration tests around so they unloaded all these things to try to break the system. They couldn't. So they have an extraordinarily secure space where your things will live for a period of time. So you can have access to, I think it's for a year. I'll have to see that's still the case. But and if you decide for whatever reason, and only people that will be able to see the video are the people that were in it. Or like you can invite your mentor to view it as well. Nobody else can see the video. So it feels really safe. And even with all that, if you still feel like I just feel uncomfortable, you can always write them and they'll delete it for you. Yeah. Anyway, so let's just watch Kathy. My running joke in these sessions is I want somebody to embed in their video app a thing that makes sure that you don't look ridiculous, because it always captures you when you have these ridiculous faces. Like, why can't they just like those Instagram filters just make you look good, regardless of where it chooses to freeze? But this is what it looks like just in real life. And if you'll be able to see over here on the right, the chat box actually progresses. So it identified this one on the screen. It says, so what is on your mind today? So that's what I'm about to say here. And then it will kind of move down this on this demonstration session. So good to see you.
Thank you, David.
So what is on your mind today?
David, I had quite a setback this summer, and I thought it would be helpful to help you get some perspective on this help me get perspective with your help, because I haven't been able. I know there's a lesson in what's happened to me, and I can't figure it out yet. So I thought I would try. Early in June, I made an attempt to play pickleball, which was because everybody was doing it, and I got on a court, and I was with 3 friends. I'm a tennis player from the past. Loved it. Played an hour. And at the end of this hour of great enjoyment, was running for a ball, my leg locked, and I did a full face fall on the pickleball court, and I broke both of my arms, which is pretty hard to do. Exactly. And so both of the upper arms, the humerus bones, were almost cleaved, and I never lost consciousness. So I landed on my nose, and I remember thinking, my nose is not broken and I still have my teeth. So this is good, but my arms feel really bad. And a long recovery, like it was 2 surgical implants, metal, and then a recovery. And I'm now about 10 weeks out, and I've got, as you can see, because I'm gesturing, My dominant hand is coming back, my left hand a little slower, but I'm creeping back toward normal.
Okay.
But this has been a lot to deal with.
Yes. Wow.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah, it must have been quite the shock. Yeah.
It's kind of hard to do. As one of my friends said, he goes, if you wanted attention, break one arm, Kathy, but don't break two.
Yeah, and I just think of all the practical limitations that arises from that.
Yeah.
And how is it sitting with you today as you're telling me this story?
Well, it's interesting because I have very conflicting emotions. I always rush to be the heroine of my story and the solver, and I've been going gangbusters, and I've been healing faster than most and pushing myself and doing all the things. However, I feel that there's some, like, this was traumatic for me in a way that I didn't really let myself process, because I was so busy being buoyed by friends and family and helpers, that the intense vulnerability that this causes when you can't do anything for yourself and you cannot move either of your arms, it was very hard for me, because I think you know me well enough to know that I don't like to ask for help if I don't, and I'm usually the person helping. So that.
I'm just going to pause it there. Just she goes on to talk more about the details of what this has meant for her, and we started playing with some of this work. So if I go over here to the AI action, so the fifth one down, so one of the characters in her story that we dealt with was little Kathy. And so one of her commitments for herself was, I gave her some guidance about how to have a conversation with little Kathy about taking care of herself. And so all of the themes that are here are already starting to show up in the beginning, 5 minutes of the conversation. And so to Jonathan's point, the AI doesn't bring in things from anywhere else but this conversation. And so everything that's here was voiced in some way and somehow in the conversation. And again, she might, your clients often say important things, but in a very calm voice. So the AI might not pick up all of that. But I found, again, it really did capture, at least as markers and reminders for me, a great starting point to help Kathy decide. And I'm going to follow up with her next week. A great place to begin to kind of pull things together for her in terms of what she wants to take from this session. So again, I like this because there's many different ways you can be involved and in kind of in dialogue with your coaching partner. The AI is tracking some of these things for you. You can always go back in and the transcript or the video if you want evidence or a reminder of kind of what happened, or maybe some of what unfolded is surprising to you. So you're really curious, like, why did I say that? And then you go back, which may be hard to tell from the transcript, but you can click on that comment, say like this one. If I clicked on this one, Kathy might say, why did I say that? Well, it'll fast forward to that spot of thing. Oh, that's what was going on that led me to say what I did. So note to self, when the client's highly emotional, I'm not as effective. Might be a thing you realize. I might need to work on being with people that are very emotional. So I just find it provides all the data you would ever need to create a practice. And then we will help you put together the small intentional practices that would then scaffold up to help you change an overall habit in your coaching practice. So I'm going to stop there and see what else comes up for you about this. Anything else that would be useful for you right now, and then I can show you how you could have this for yourself.
Question, David. It's Colleen.
Colleen.
So with this technology, you're showing us one particular session that you had with Kathy.
Yeah.
So if you had, like, say, 3 sessions, 5 sessions,
yes,
would it keep gathering all of that data and incorporating it into the next session or an overall session? Or is it just a standalone one-off?
Jonathan, you've been using this more recently than I have. In the past, no, it didn't really do that. It was mostly session by session. You could input things yourself as part of the notes and feedback. But are you finding, Jonathan, that it's picking up themes from earlier sessions? I know they were working on that, but I don't know if they've gotten
Not automatically.
okay.
Now, what it does do is if you put something in a client relationship on the My Notes tab,
Yeah.
it pushes those between sessions. So when I
Yeah.
notice a theme in one session, I note it in the My Notes tab, knowing it's going to show up in the My Notes section the next time I talk to the
Yeah.
client. And you can do a lot keeping yourself on track. So it doesn't necessarily track themes automatically, but it makes it easy
Yeah.
for you to pull your thoughts session to session.
Yeah, thank you. That's what I thought. But because again, all that would be possible to do this automatically, but that takes an extraordinary amount of computing power, and in the end of the day, it's not really necessary because, as Jonathan said, there's an easy workaround manually, and it kind of keeps you engaged that way as the coach, and it keeps this affordable and accessible for folks. Karen Sutter.
Yeah, actually, it's pronounced Suter.
Suter. Okay, well, hey, I've been saying it wrong the whole time. Sorry.
Don't
about
worry, 90% of people get it wrong.
that. Okay.
I think I heard you say that there will be a way that either the software or the mentors will help us put together SIPs, and I think I heard you say
Yeah.
build the scaffolding for us. So how much of that is us doing it? How much of it is the system, the mentors doing it?
So none. So in time, the plans are to embed more of this. So like you might identify, I need to pause longer when I'm before I respond. So for narrative coaching could import tools and resources and practices for you in that space. So if you just either AI or you identified that's something you want to work on, you could go right into the platform itself and choose one of the resources. But it's not quite there yet, and I didn't want to stress the system. And so what we've done is in the video that you'll see if you sign up, it just gives you a template for how to create one. It gives you a couple of examples of one, and it gives you like about a dozen examples of SIPs that you could choose to start building your own. And then what we'll do is be about 3 weeks into the start of the cohort, we'll have a special session. We're going to bring the SIPs you've created and talk about which ones are working for you, which ones are not, and then we can workshop them together so everybody feels confident they know how to build them for themselves. And we'll do that for now. I think it's a great skill anyways, because if you can do it for yourself, you can do it for your clients. I think there's a huge win there. And then when we feel like the platform's mature to a space where all that's ready to go, then as we build up a library of SIPs, we'll upload them into the platform for narrative coaches.
So we are helping create the content by using it.
Yes.
Yeah.
In a way, yeah, and more in the end, more of them will come from me to start, but then over time, what makes a SIP work is because it fits exactly what you need to be working on.
Mhm.
So I could have it'd be a full-time job if I wanted to create 10,000 SIPs for every possible contingency, and I have other ways to spend my life than doing that.
That's helpful. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Any more questions on the platform for right now? All right. I'm going to stop this and go back to this. Where did it go? Here it is. Move it back over here. Okay, so we did all that. So these are the, just in terms of this, if this interests you, there's sort of 3 levels you can choose to, I did this backwards. Huh. I was fixing this up and I did it backwards. Sorry about that. I've had a, anyways, I won't tell you why, but it's backwards. But anyways, there's 3 levels, prices are correct, names are backwards for 2 of them. But level 1 is just the most basic one, gives you 3 months basically on your own. We'll cluster you again in practice groups, but then you'll kind of take it from there. Level 2 brings the mentor into the picture and more support for the SIPs. And level 3 is more about you spending some time with me as well every month to kind of go deeper on what you're working on. And the correct version of this and all the information you need to register is at that link. Emily, if you could just draw that up and put it up in the chat box, that would be great. And then if you have any other questions, just reach out to us. But we would love to have you come join us and be part of this pioneering group. They're doing some exciting new things with Jonathan and I as well, bringing our voice into the AI part as well. So I think for me, it's just a golden opportunity to get in on the ground floor of this and create a venue that we could never really create on our own, for you to give you the space and support to practice what you most need to practice to get better as a narrative coach. Yeah. So I'm going to just take this down and see if there's anything else you'd like to share before we call it a day.
David, it's Colleen again. One last question, if I may.
You can have as many questions as you want, and then we'll take it to Jonathan. There's no limit on questions.
You're opening the door there. Just remember, you asked for it.
Okay.
So I'm I think 2017 or 2018 narrative coach when you did the first cohort with WBEX. So for me, my journey has been in many other areas and fields, and I'm just circling around back again. And I don't know with your offering if it's the right time for me, because I would need to go back and do that relearn part.
Okay.
Right. So, you know, what are the kind of, you know, I know it's the self expectation, but with regards to working with another mentor, working with a peer or another mentor, and then also having the input from you as well. What do you think would be, you know, because I would want to be in full support of somebody else, right, to be up to speed.
Yeah. So 2 things. So one is that there's not, so surprisingly, we've had actually a bunch of people come to these sessions that are not even narrative coaches at all. They saw me speak at WBEX, or they went to something I did once, and they just are intrigued and they want to come do this. So there's no exams, so no one's going to grade you of, oh, I'm sorry, Colleen, that was a sucky narrative coaching move. You should never have done that. So part of it is just basic coaching skills, as you know, and the nuances of what we might bring to this, you know, are important, and a lot of it you can do without that. And as you create practices, and there's resources we'll provide in the resource center on our Circle platform, which will cover a lot of the basics of some of this stuff as reminders, especially around the core things which make narrative coaching unique. And then we're also going to offer a more essentials version of narrative coaching in the summer, at least summer in the Northern Hemisphere. If you want to come back and take that as a refresher, it also would be a good thing to do to kind of deepen the narrative coaching part of this. But you could have fun on the platform even before then if you wanted to. Yeah. Jonathan.
A shameless plug here.
Okay.
The thing that I am most excited about Ovida, and from what I understand about the narrative coaching approach, this will be notable and important, is that the feedback is attached to the actual moment where it occurs. You know, there's a reason why this thing's called a product of the Moment Institute. And this is moment specific feedback that is where you're able to really go back to that moment, think through what was happening for yourself, evaluate your decisions without the pressure of the client waiting for you to say something immediate and effective. So the tool just really gives you an opportunity like nothing else I've ever seen to zoom in on the very instance, trying hard not to use the word moment again, the very instance where the coaching decision is made.
Yeah.
And you can then step back and evaluate, hey, am I maximizing this relationship? Are we exploring what really matters most to the client? Yeah. Am I doing unique things in this moment for this session? It has accelerated coach development, and I see Janet in the room here who was in the original pilot we did.
Yeah.
It accelerates your coach development because you can zoom in closer than any other feedback tool I've ever seen. So I hope you decide to use it.
Yeah.
You'll be glad you did.
And it avoids, to Jonathan's point, two of the most common headaches in feedback. One is having to remember, like, so your person gives you feedback. Remember back when in the beginning when you said this, and you have to reconstruct it, and then you have different views of what you thought you heard and what you thought happened, and you're already lost. This goes right to it, but it also means that I don't have to like watch an entire video before I can do anything, because I don't know where the important parts are going to be. If it was a session I wasn't at, right? Well, this marks it all out and gives me a head start by already preloading key moments as a place to begin. Then I can scan the transcript in 5 minutes, find a couple other, hey, that's really interesting, or yeah. And then I might link it to the video. Oh yeah, their whole face changed when they said that. And that's why it showed up in the transcript that way. And so it, like to Jonathan's point, it just creates such a richer, more focused set of information for you to get better.
Now you are going to have some moments.
Yeah.
This is a heads up, but it's a good heads up.
Yeah.
You are going to have some moments where you go, what the hell was I doing? And there's lots to learn from those.
Yeah.
And you can decide that, you know what, hey, actually that did serve the client. So maybe that's what I was doing, or I don't want to do that anymore. And you lower the likelihood that that's going to happen again. So it's unvarnished in the best possible way.
Yeah. Thanks. Karen.
Yeah, a couple of questions. Can you give a sense of how much time are you finding people are spending on this? In your pilot investigations? Sort of on average to get a reasonable, I don't know.
Yeah, so in our pilot, I think people met, 5 times, 6 times, something like that. And most of them did coaching sessions for about 45 minutes. And then they would just stop and then they'd record the other direction. So then both of them, the recordings would be available at the same time. The platform, this was in January. It feels like 10 years ago, but it was in January. The platform was nowhere near where it is now. It was so rudimentary. And there's so much more that it has and some more that's coming. So what people found is that because it allows you to zero in on specific things you want to improve. At first people thought, oh, I'll do all kinds of recordings. And then they didn't, because we had a limit on the pilot, but also because they said, I have so much from one session now. I could only do one session and have 3 months of work to do from one session, because our habits show up over and over again. So we find like spacing it. So you might record 1 week, take a couple of weeks to practice, reflect, do some more thinking about it, take some notes, post things, come back and practice again, prepared by the material that's already there from you from the first time. So again, we sort of have a number of sessions for each of the levels, but you can decide how you want to use those.
David, may I offer something?
Yeah, sure.
I find in some of the work I've done with students, I find that there's 2 definite opportunities to review the session, and they have different outcomes. One is right after the session, when it's fresh, when your mind is clean, when you can remember what you said next in a given moment. That feedback can be very helpful, but it's helpful in a different way to go back to a session 2, 3, 4 weeks later, because you still have access when you can't remember what you're going to do next, what you do next in the session, and view it with fresh eyes and ears, because the comments and the feedback resonate very differently when just that little bit of recency has worn off, and you might not be able to take yourself back to the moment quite as cleanly and say, okay, what was I thinking at that time? But the learning lens is just different enough that I think it's also valuable. So that might be an approach you take as you review. Do one session right afterward, and then look at it again in a few weeks when your memory is different of what happened in the session.
Yeah, good.
So I have another question directly for Jonathan, and I want to pull up the thing you said. It accelerates coach development, and I wonder if you could qualify that.
Absolutely. It makes it much easier to identify the specific areas that need your intentional development time. So that's the first thing. Secondly, as you watch yourself doing multiple sessions, it's much easier to get a clear picture of your patterns. And then once you have that picture, you can step back and say, how does this pattern serve my client? How does this get in the way of serving my client? And just being able to be that kind of intentional really makes a difference. And then the third and potentially most powerful piece of accelerating development is that the feedback is tied to the exact moment where it occurred. And I just haven't found a platform that does that quite as effectively. I mean, other than going over a recording live with a supervisor or a mentor, this kind of removes the calendar challenges of pulling that off, because the session happens, the mentor adds their comments when they're available, you can go back to it. And if that next level conversation happens, you're able to be very efficient and very productive in processing through exactly what the feedback meant, how it might affect your ongoing development, and how you might change your strategy next time when you're in a similar situation. So those three lenses, I think, really do help.
I mean, there is no approved method of determining coach development. If you're going to get into things like in validity and all that sort of stuff. So
well, I'd say there's no universal method. There's some approved methods, but there's no universal method.
Yeah.
So have you sort of used those approved methods to hold a lens or a microscope on what this work is doing?
I'll answer that two different ways. I happen to be an ICF coach, so the competencies based in the ICF world definitely come to life in the course of the ongoing conversation. So being able to more skillfully deliver the coaching behaviors that are connected to the ICF competencies is made much easier by using the Ovida platform. More interesting, and I think more effective, are the developmental lenses that come from a posture of supervision, where there's some personal internal reflective practice that then gets expanded in a conversation with a trusted ally, a trusted mentor, someone who knows your unique abilities and your skills. And the thing that Ovida does that I think is unique and notable is that the level of personalization, the individual development plan in the learning and development parlance, really is able to be brought to life in a way that not a lot of other tools make possible.
Yeah. And if I could add just one thing to your three pieces, Jonathan, I think a fourth thing about accelerating coach development is it provides you a longitudinal resource to track your progress over time, which is really hard to do as a human. You have to go back to your notes and like review them, and you know, all that time that we don't get paid for, and you know, it's kind of frustrating. All the
Very much
documentation right there, and
Sure.
and so you can see like, hey, you're making great progress on these 3 things you said were important to you. In this 4th one, the metrics and our observations and the feedback is pretty much the same. So what's that about? And so we're yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Thanks. No,
I appreciate that, especially because there's also no human error in there. Your notes, that little bit of inaccuracy in your notes, you don't have that because it captures, hey, this is what happened. And it's hard to avoid that.
No, thanks. I'm aware I've asked a lot of questions, so but I appreciate the opportunity to do that.
Great.
So thank
All right. Any other final reflections or questions you have?
David, when you're clustering us together, will it be by the level we choose, or will you be doing it?
Yeah, it depends. I mean, part of this is we did some sort of bit of a research with the groups about what people wanted, and so we made our best guess, but we don't know what actually people are going to choose. So we might have to make some minor adjustments before we start in 10 days, but we'll see. But by time zones for sure, and we'll make sure everybody has what they need. So, yeah. All right. Anything in the chat box, Emily, that I've missed? Okay, great. All right. Well, Jonathan, thanks for coming to join us. Appreciate it very much. And it's like you're in a frat room with these overstuffed leather beat up.
Yeah, it's basically what it is. So thanks for the willingness to have me wander in and see what you're doing.
It's great. All right. Well, thank you much for your time. If we can be helpful in your decision making, let us know. Otherwise, we hope you'll come and join us. All right. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
There we go.